My sister and I were heading to the ancient world last October, visiting Egypt, Jordan, and Israel. We planned a 4-week trip. We'd been there 5 days when suddenly my sister tumbled, leaving her with multiple fractures and wheelchair-bound. This is my account of how accessible traveling there is for people with less mobility in Egypt and Jordan. Although the accident happened at Edfu Temple, I've reflected at how easy or difficult it would have been visiting Cairo and Luxor in a wheelchair. If you can add any details, please feel free to leave a comment. Cairo is not the most hospitable place for those in wheelchairs. Curb ramps to access the pavements are non-existent, and the only easy way to tour the city is via a specially designed taxi known as TX4 Black Cabs. They have wheelchair ramps and windows galore to see the sights from inside. With English-speaking drivers available and book cabs arriving within the hour, they are a stress-free option for immobile visitors. In Giza, close-up exterior views of the pyramids are impressive and easy to reach for everyone. The wide pavements provide good mobility opportunities, and a horse-drawn carriage ride might be an option if you're able to get into it initially. Going inside the pyramid chambers, however, is not feasible due to the steps and small enclosed spaces. The modern, brightly lit airport at Cairo is thankfully wheelchair-friendly with ramps, elevators, and toilets for disabled travelers. If you require assistance around the airport, you are best contacting the airlines as far in advance as possible. Luckily, both Luxor and Aswan airports are built on one level, making it easy for wheelchair users to navigate. Luxor may not be the most wheelchair-friendly. It is possible to get around with the help of a companion. You won't have much difficulty at Karnak nor at the Colosseum Memnon, as the pavement is reasonably flat. Yet where the early tombs stand at the Valley of Kings, there are an abundance of staircases, making it difficult for people with less mobility. Thankfully, the chambers from the 20th dynasty are high, wide, and gently slope downwards, making it easier to navigate in a wheelchair. At Hatshepsut Temple, there is a little knotty train between the car park and the structure, while the temple itself has a long, ancient stone ramp for access to each level. It's a little steep though, so do bear that in mind. The pavement at the Edfu Temple is reasonably flat. Unfortunately, my sister Rani fell over a small piece of raised concrete just outside the temple and fractured her toes in multiple places. The locals rushed to her aid, brought her a chair, water, ice, and called for an ambulance. They were very helpful, but in Egypt, it's tough to know whether people are assisting out of their kindness or because they want tips. It seems everyone expects tips, including the policeman and security guard who helped wheel the stretcher to the ambulance. Within a short 1 hour, a doctor was called onto the ship, managed to get film from an ancient portable X-ray machine, and put plaster on her foot. Quite efficient to our surprise. After this accident, we had to cancel our trip to Israel, but did manage to complete the itinerary in Jordan after Egypt, with the help of wheelchair and crutches. Our ship docked right opposite the Temple of Komombo, but unfortunately the steps would have been too difficult for Ronnie. This was a wheelchair fail and she couldn't disembark. I found online, however, the temple is included on wheelchair tour itinerary with some companies. I can only assume they have equipment to carry people up the stairs, or there is another way to get there on flat pavements. In Aswan, it's difficult for wheelchair users to take a felucca ride or visit to Philae Temple with a compulsory boat transfer, its steps and uneven surfaces, which meant Ronnie wasn't able to join us. We did manage to take her to the Philae Essence Palace, the Perfume Emporium, and the local market. The next day, we were met with excellent facilities at the Movenpick Resort, which were all wheelchair friendly. Arriving at the Movenpick Island by boat wasn't the easiest, but there were people on hand to help, with their hand out for a tip. We reached Abu Simbel in a comfy minivan, and there is a buggy taking you from the entrance to the temples. But the ground outside and inside the temples wasn't wheelchair friendly. Ronnie chose not to go in but visited on-site museum instead. On the way back to Aswan, we sighted a mirage in the desert for the first time. At Aswan Airport, Now Air has a truck with a raised platform to help Ronnie and another wheelchair passenger to the aircraft. Jordan doesn't rank high on the list for wheelchair users. Roadside curbs can be uncommonly high, and many of the sites involve long walks over uneven ground. Yet it's not all bad news. The Jordanian government has legislated that wheelchair access must be added to all new public buildings. On top of that, entry to some attractions, including Petra, is free for those with disability. Arriving at Amman Airport, Ronnie had no problem getting about in a wheelchair provided by the airline. Similarly, at our hotel Amman Rotana, we had great wheelchair assistance. It's best to notify the venues of any required assistance beforehand. Plaster cast in the Dead Sea? Yes, with plenty of assistance, of course. After taking a private hire car from Amman, we reached the luxurious Kempinski Hotel Dead Sea. With buggy access around the expansive resort, several swimming pools and wheelchair accessible areas, it turned out to be a top choice. Ronnie was offered a Dead Sea experience at the Ishtar Spa with her plaster wrapped in myriad plastic bags. But it didn't really cut it, so with the help of numerous staff members, Ronnie was carried down to the waterfront and balanced in the salt water to get a real Dead Sea experience. As to be expected, monetary tips were the catalyst for the amazing service, but it was well worth it to see her smile. We took Uber from the Dead Sea to Wadi Mus, the town closest to Petra, arrived after approximately 5.5 hours. You can also fly from Amman. After a night's rest, we entered Petra early in the morning. We hired a horse carriage at the entrance for the main trail, which is 4 kilometers long at 45 JD. We had an hour stop at the treasury. The horse carriage does not take you to the monastery. You have to take a donkey ride to get there, which we didn't do. The most convenient and best stay in Petra is at the Movenpick Resort, located directly at the entrance of Petra. The hotel staff will help taking your wheelchair across the street to the visitors center. Petra Guest House Hotel is also right next to the entrance of Petra, but it doesn't look as good as the Movenpick Resort. I always wanted a desert glamping experience. We took a taxi from Petra to Wadi Rum, the dramatic Red Rock Desert. It took 1.5 hours. There are regular buses going there, but unsure if accessible by people in wheelchair. We stayed in UFO Luxor Hotel, which uses golf buggies for transport. But to get into your camp or reception or restaurant, there are a few steps where you will need assistance. Before leaving the resort, one of the staff left handwritten souvenir on Ronnie's plaster foot. There are no direct public transport from Wadi Rum to Amman. We booked the same Uber driver. It took just over 6 hours. For these long trips in Jordan, you can negotiate discounts with the Uber drivers. Although we cut our trip short, we learned a great deal about how we take traveling able-bodied for granted. We know without the help of locals, staff, and having a travel companion, Ronnie's trip would have been a very different experience. Subscribe to FirstClass.Travel channel for weekly inspirations.